So then I would like to take you through, what's going on in China, what is the current economic situation, and how we look ahead in at least next 5 years. Of course, if you look at GDP, China actually registered quite impressive growth. On the average, by the end of the year, China should guarantee 9% growth by the end of the year. But if you look at the numbers, from the first quarter to the fourth quarter, it's coming down because of, not really serious austerity program, but because of the inflation. And we have to curb the inflation. So, and also try to control the overinvestment in certain sectors like housing. And the industrial output also slowed down a bit, although it's over two-digit growth, because due to two major factors. One, the external demand declined due to the softened demand in Europe and also from the States, because China is still export-led economy, given the economic structure, but also due to the tight monetary policy at home. And the fixed asset investment always the driving force in the last 30 years in China for the economic development. But due to the tight credit policy, especially for the infrastructure, public utility, the investment, the equity investment at least, comes from the local government. Due to the budget constraint and also, they have to put down at least 30% the equity investment, then the banks can top up the investment. So in other words, the budgetary investment is far from sufficient to formulate the new policy package. So due to the tight monetary policy, each banks are subject to the credit quota. So once we are constrained by credit quota, we cannot top up. So a lot of new infrastructure investment was not started this year. So you could see very flat growth for infrastructure investment in general, public utility investment in the municipalities, but in some other sectors like low-income housing, you could see the growth, and the irrigation system. Due to the climate change, I don't know if some of the Chinese students in the audience are from Yunnan or Guizhou province. And these provinces, historically, these two provinces are very rich in hydro resources, a lot of rivers, a lot of, a lot of rain because the forest is there. But due to the climate change, a severe drought in the last 3 years. So irrigation become the priority, not only for these provinces, but because China is the country with the largest population on the world. And the food security is top priority of the government, not only for development, but for the daily necessities. So, once China starts to import food in the large scale, it will impact the world price of food. So we also, China has been attached the importance to the food security since the establishment of the new China, the People's Republic of China. So the irrigation system, that's why they gave irrigation system such priority. And for the commercial housing, of course, the development is on hold, obviously. And through not only through the credit control to the developers, but also for the consumers, the people who would like to buy the houses. This, you need to be qualified to buy. If you already own one apartment, and you have to, if you want to buy the second one, and it's very difficult to get mortgage. And at least you're requested to put down 60% down payment. Then you can borrow, the interest is higher. And nobody allowed to buy the third one. And because government view it as a speculative investment, not really. But this is the problem, because in China, the channels for investment is not there. And you could see, because due to the time constraint, I could not describe the capital market situation, but the capital market is pretty shallow. And the bonds trading is not in the secondary market, not through the stock exchange, but it's just the over-counter trading. So there's further a lot of room for development, but at the same time, the channels for investment is very limited. That's why people would like to invest in real estate to have the capital gain. And the real demand is there, given the speed of urbanization in China. A lot of rural people start to move to the city centers to look for a job and to be the permanent resident, because in the past there was the restriction for the rural people to move to the city to live. But now this kind of restrictions start to be relaxed. So the local government need to accommodate the real demand for housing and public service as well. Few charts, so you can skip that. And import-export growth is still around 25%, pretty high, and for the first three quarters. And there are still problems I have touched upon. And one is, I don't know if you're familiar with the structure and the mechanism for local government to invest in infrastructure. We call it, each province or major municipalities, they have, we call it a platform cooperation. Means this company serves as a platform to borrow from the banks. And at the same time, the local government put in equity in this cooperation, borrow for infrastructure development and public utility development. So they are the focal point for infrastructure development. So they are the major borrowers at the same time. But sometimes they overborrow themselves. And the sustainability is the concern, especially when you have a tight monetary policy and the problems start to surface. And SME always have difficulty to have access to the banking sector because traditionally all banks in China were owned by the state. And including CDB, very much used to dealing with state-owned enterprises, especially China Development Bank, just as an example. We are a wholesale bank. We do not take deposit. So we do not have a network to have access to the small borrowers. So in order to address this issue, CDB start to provide wholesale loans to the local commercial banks. Through them, they can lend to the smaller borrowers like SOE or household business or microfinance project. So the performance, to our surprise, was not bad at all. So not much NPL occurred in the process because once they have the access, they really treasure the opportunity to borrow from someone else to develop their own business. So they pay very much on time. But some of SOEs, they have financial difficulties. They borrow from the shadow banks. The shadow banks, interest rate is 2 to 3 times higher than the normal interest rate. So once the demand declined from the world market, and they got into trouble, so the lot of problems, bankruptcy, but at the same time, the consequence is the social problem. So another point I would like to mention here, for when China as the largest developing or emerging market, when you address the economic issue or development issue, you really have to look at the social aspect. So you need to balance. That's why in the 12th five-year plan, more balanced growth is stressed and is given the priority. For the next 5 years, and how we look at China, but immediately next year, for year 2012, and we see there will be slowdown for economic growth. This is the intended outcome. It's not really, China cannot sustain two-digit growth over the next 10 or 20 years, and we need to slow down a bit. And, but of course, we need to control the price level, and because this is not very accurate projection, but we need to control it in the neighborhood of 4 or 4.5%, the price increase. And because this is the first year for China to enter the period of 12 five-year plan period. And of course, economic development is part of the objective, but more balanced social development is the focus of next five-year plan. And we need to look at the economic structure, development structure in China, and the foreign trade, import and export should in terms of proportion need to be shrunk. But this is very difficult adjustment. And also low value added manufacture need to be shifted from coastal area to hinterland region. And it's already happening, but very slowly, because the government, once they're used to quick money, and sometimes if the cash flow is not there, it will pose the problem for the budget revenue. So their room for investing in social service is limited. So it's very political. But in the long run, we look at the engine of the economic growth in China still in two areas. One is industrialization and another is urbanization. Yesterday, we had a very good discussion with the professors from various institutes in MIT, including urban planning and architecture. And we already have the cooperation as a bank with the institute on the designing of the new cities, smart city concept introduced, because we invest a lot in the urbanization. I think this is the area we need to address in the future. The fiscal policy need to be improved as well, and less investment in the capital investment project, more social service provided in the 12 five-year plan period. So I don't go into detail about municipal bond issue, but I think this is the general picture of China. And if you have any questions, I will be happy to answer during the Q&A session. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Ms. Wang. I guess in the grand scheme of things, in particular in light of the economic situation in Europe and the U.S., it's very, I guess, encouraging to hear a very optimistic perspective on China. And of course, some of the issues I assume that can be debated, and we might come back to some of these discussions.